Hi guys, sorry to interrupt your viewing, but please subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you.
It was a Thursday evening, quiet in that too still, too clean way that only a house filled with tension can feel. The roast in the oven was done, not burnt, not overdone, just done in every sense of the word. The potatoes were mashed, the table was set, and the candles were unlit, waiting on the sideboard like a decision she hadn't made yet. Emily glanced at the clock again. 7:22. He was late. Again. But she wasn't surprised, not anymore. Disappointed, yes. Hurt, maybe. But surprised? No, that stopped around the time she realized she was married to a man who knew how to look her in the face while lying through his teeth without blinking. She'd spent the whole day pretending this birthday would be different. 45 was a milestone, wasn't it? Not a round one like 40 or 50, but still the kind of age where a man might look at his life and think, damn, I married well. I got lucky. But Rick wasn't that kind of man anymore. Maybe he never was. Still, Emily made the same garlic mashed potatoes he loved, the same lemon cake she'd baked for the last 11 years, and she even found that old Sinatra playlist he liked to mock but secretly loved. It wasn't much, but it was more than he deserved. When the front door finally opened, it was 7:49. He didn't call ahead, didn't text, just walked in like the whole damn evening hadn't been sitting around waiting for him to care. Emily didn't rush to greet him. She just stood by the sink, one hand on the counter, the other twisting her wedding ring like it might give her some kind of answer. Rick walked in with that cocky little smirk, the one he used when he knew he'd pushed the line but figured he could charm his way back across it. "Smells good," he said, tossing his keys onto the table without looking at her. No kiss, no hug, not even a hey, Just smells good, like they were roommates sharing a kitchen instead of a life. She wanted to snap back, say something cutting, something final, but she didn't. Not yet. Instead, she asked if he'd had a long day, knowing full well where that conversation would go. He muttered something about the dealership, some customer who wasted his time, a coworker who screwed up paperwork. The usual. Rick could talk for 20 minutes about car lot drama, but couldn't ask how she was even if you paid him. They sat down at the table, and for a minute, Emily almost believed she could get through it. The roast was tender, the wine was good, and he hadn't started an argument. But then he put down his fork and said it. Just like that. No warning, no lead-up, no hesitation. He said, "You know what my real birthday gift would have been?" Emily looked up, fork midair, her heart already preparing for impact. "A damn divorce." And he laughed. Not a deep laugh, not even one that said he was joking. Just a cold chuckle, like it was some kind of inside joke she hadn't been let in on. Emily blinked, once, twice, and then sat her fork down slowly, carefully, like setting a trap. Her throat tightened, not from tears, but from the heat rising behind her ribs. He went back to eating like he hadn't just dropped a bomb in the middle of her kitchen. There are moments in a marriage when something snaps. Not loudly. Not like a crack or a scream. Sometimes it's quiet, a shift, a breath, a long blink. This was that moment for her. She didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't even leave the room. Instead, she stood, walked over to the sideboard, and lit the candles. One by one, without rushing. Each tiny flame flickered up like it was bearing witness. Rick didn't say a damn thing. Just kept chewing like nothing had happened. Maybe he thought she didn't hear him, or maybe he didn't care. But Emily heard every syllable. And something in her clicked. She finished dinner in silence. Cleaned the plates, wiped the counter, even packed him a piece of cake for tomorrow like some suburban ritual she was performing out of habit. He went upstairs to watch TV, and she stood at the sink, staring at her reflection in the window, a tired woman in her early 40s, eyes puffy from years of swallowing what she should have screamed. And still, she didn't cry. Around 10:30, when the house was quiet and Rick was snoring like a busted chainsaw, She walked out to the garage barefoot. It was cold, concrete under her feet, but she didn't care. She reached up to the top shelf, moved aside a box labeled Christmas lights, and pulled down a dusty old lockbox. She hadn't opened it in years, not since Rick got laid off and promised he'd bounce back. Inside were receipts. Stacks of them. Groceries, bills, car insurance, medical copays, pet food, even his damn Netflix subscription. All of it going back to 2019. Every dollar she covered while he figured things out. Every promise he didn't keep. She flipped through them slowly, carefully, like sacred texts. Each receipt was a memory, a weight. She'd carried the whole damn marriage on her back, and somehow still got called too cold, too sensitive, too much. Emily ran her fingers along the edge of the box, her nails clicking against metal. There was no plan yet. No outburst coming. Just a quiet certainty curling in her chest like smoke before fire. She closed the box, set it on the workbench, and whispered to no one, "Okay." Because the candles still flickered, but something inside her had gone stone cold. The next morning, the light came in through the kitchen blinds the same way it always had, streaking gold over countertops she'd scrubbed 1,000 times, bouncing off stainless steel appliances she had bought, maintained, and paid off by herself. But something had shifted. The light wasn't different, but she was. Emily sat at the table, fingers curled around a chipped coffee mug, staring at the untouched slice of lemon cake she hadn't had the heart to serve. It sat there on the plate like a relic from a different life, one where she still believed that effort and loyalty were currency that could buy love. She thought about that lockbox sitting in the garage, about the years of silent sacrifice it represented. It hadn't started with a single event, not some big betrayal or shouting match. No, the unraveling came slow, like rust creeping up the edge of a blade, unnoticed until it was too late to stop. Rick had lost his job back in 2019, some corporate restructure that axed his whole department, and at the time, she remembered holding him while he cried into her shoulder, all stiff and humiliated. He had called her his rock, his anchor, his ride or die. "We'll get through it, he had whispered into her hair. "Just give me a couple months to bounce back." A couple months turned into a couple years. He applied to a few places in the beginning, mostly half-hearted online applications and calls to buddies who owed him favors. But when nothing came through fast enough, Rick changed course. He said he needed time to figure out what's next, that maybe he didn't want to go back into corporate life. Emily picked up extra projects at work, juggled bills like a damn magician, and told herself it was temporary. That word, temporary, became a noose around her own throat. By mid-2020, she was paying for everything. Mortgage, groceries, his truck insurance, his cell phone, his gym membership, which, by the way, he started going to more once he was unemployed. Emily didn't complain, not outwardly. She just got quieter, more efficient. She kept the machine of their life running, like a solo mechanic in a garage where the other guy took extended lunch breaks and came back with perfume on his collar. The worst part wasn't the money. It wasn't even the lies, not yet. It was the shift. The way he looked at her differently. Like she was furniture. Like she was just part of the environment. He started leaving his dishes in the sink, started texting during dinner, started using words like nag when she reminded him to call his mother. The man she had once trusted to have her back now looked through her like she was wallpaper. Then came the little things, small purchases that didn't add up. Emily handled all the finances because Rick wasn't good with that stuff, which now struck her as funny in a sad, pathetic way. One day she noticed a $47 charge from a wine bar across town. She'd never been there. Then a $72 dinner from a steakhouse they hadn't visited since their 5th anniversary. When she asked, Rick waved it off. Said he met up with the guys after work. Funny thing, considering he didn't technically have a job at the time. When she pressed further, his voice got sharp. "Jesus, Emily, do you hear yourself? You're being paranoid. You always overthink everything. Gaslighting, subtle but effective. It made her second-guess herself for a while, until she stopped second-guessing and started documenting. She bought a ledger. Nothing fancy, just a spiral-bound notebook she labeled household expenses on the front, like it was some budgeting project instead of a survival tactic. In it, she listed every charge she paid: utilities, food, dog grooming, gas, car repairs, Rick's golf clubs he needed for networking, and that one damn pair of cowboy boots he bought with a gift card and just a little extra from their joint account. Every Sunday night, she'd stay up after he went to bed and tally the totals. She started adding annotations, too. Notes like he said he'd pay me back, or he didn't say thank you, or he was out till midnight and smelled like mint and wine. And then one night, while combing through the joint credit card statement, she spotted something that made her stomach flip. A hotel. Not a motel. Not some sketchy roadside dump. A boutique downtown hotel with spa services and valet. 3 months ago. 2 nights. Signed off with his initials, and, in the line marked guests, a name scribbled next to his. Jenny. Jenny, with a stupid heart over the I. Like she was in high school. Emily stared at the name until her eyes blurred. That was when something in her cracked, not like a branch in a storm, but like concrete giving way after years of quiet pressure. She didn't scream. She didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, she turned to a clean page in her ledger and wrote in bold, capital letters, total expenses covered since 2019. Then she started adding. Rent, 26 months at $1,700. Utilities, gas, electric, water, internet. Groceries, weekly average times 150 weeks. Insurance, auto, home, medical. Car payments, Rick's truck, the one she didn't drive. Miscellaneous, meals, gym fees, travel, and that goddamn birthday cake. She ran the numbers twice. Then a third time. The total was just under $82,000. She blinked at it for a minute, then said aloud, dryly, I added up everything from 2019 to now. That's 5 years of rent, bills, car payments. Almost 82 grand. Actually, maybe that's 6 years? I dunno. Math was never my strong suit. She smiled when she said it. A real smile, not forced, not bitter. Because for the first time in a long time, she wasn't confused anymore. She wasn't emotional. She was focused. The candles she lit on Rick's birthday weren't for celebration. They were for illumination. A fire under her resolve. She had facts now, not just feelings. She had proof. She had motive. And she had Jenny's name. Emily closed the ledger, stood up from the kitchen table, and walked upstairs with the quiet determination of someone who just decided how the story ends. Rick was in bed, snoring with his mouth open, one leg splayed out like a slob who never learned boundaries. She didn't even look at him. Just walked to the closet, opened her lockbox again, and slid the latest receipt on top of the pile. She stared down at it, the hotel charge, the little heart over the I, the date circled in red ink, and whispered, Thanks, Jenny. Because now, the game was on. Emily had always believed in the kind of silence that could shatter glass, not the dramatic kind, not the crying in the bathroom kind, but the kind that settled under your skin and rewired something inside you without asking permission. After discovering that hotel receipt with the name scribbled in loopy, childish handwriting, she sat alone in her car for almost 20 minutes, engine off, keys in her lap, heart not broken but sharpened. She wasn't the type to lose her mind in a screaming match or throw dishes across the room. No, her kind of fury brewed slow and cold, like winter creeping in under the doorframe. The name Jenny rang around in her head, with a kind of tinny echo that felt too light for the weight it carried. Jenny. Of course it was Jenny. Not a Diane. Not a Margaret. A Jenny. The kind of name that came with bubble letters and glitter pens and hair flipped over one shoulder. The kind of woman who probably giggled in meetings and touched men's arms when she laughed, all flirty charm and faux innocence. Emily didn't need to meet her to know exactly who she was dealing with. She just needed Google. A quick search confirmed what Emily already knew in her gut. Jenny Reynolds, 27, worked at the same dealership where Rick had landed his rebuilding job last year. Sales associate, 3 years running, top performer in 2 quarters, and apparently queen of selfies. Her Instagram was public, a rookie mistake Emily would quietly appreciate. Picture after picture scrolled past the screen, iced coffee in the front seat, manicures with rhinestones, hashtags like #MondayMood and #BossBabe, and then one post that made Emily's stomach drop even though she saw it coming. A shot of a dashboard with a pair of aviator sunglasses resting on the console. Nothing too suspicious unless you happen to live with the man who owned those exact glasses. Emily zoomed in without even realizing she was doing it, and there it was, Rick's left hand, gripping the steering wheel, wedding band removed, but the scar from where it used to sit still faintly visible. She didn't cry. She didn't even feel that jolt of betrayal that had already passed. What she felt now was a strange kind of vindication, like her paranoia had finally paid off and handed her a receipt of its own. She didn't confront Rick. Not yet. She knew better than to waste the element of surprise on a man who'd been taking her for a fool. Instead, she perfected her mask. She cooked dinner like nothing had changed, asked about his day with a sweet little smile, laughed at his worn-out dealership stories like they were still a team. She kissed him on the cheek when he left in the morning, told him to drive safe, and waved from the porch like a damn sitcom wife. Behind that smile, though, she was assembling something far more dangerous than rage. She was building a strategy. Step 1 was information, and now that she had the who, she needed the how far. Emily started collecting screenshots. Not just from Jenny's Instagram, but from her Facebook, her Twitter, even an old Pinterest board that featured a wedding inspiration section filled with rustic barns and mismatched mason jars. The audacity of that girl, dreaming of vows while sleeping with another woman's husband. She called her sister Gwen that same evening, poured herself a glass of wine, and let the truth spill out in the steady, methodical way of someone finally admitting the house was on fire while calmly walking out the front door. Gwen, who had always had a mouth like a sailor and a heart like a grizzly bear, didn't even pause before saying, "You want me to drive over there and burn his shit on the lawn?" Emily laughed, real and deep, for the first time in weeks, and said, "Not yet. Let's be smarter than that." Because she didn't want chaos. She wanted precision. She wanted Rick to see every single dollar she'd spent on him itemized and laminated. She wanted him to open an envelope and realize the cost of disrespect. She didn't want to scream. She wanted to hand him a damn invoice. The next morning, she made calls. Quiet ones. A lawyer her coworker had used during her divorce. A financial advisor she hadn't seen since her 20s. She even called Steve, an accountant friend from college who still owed her a favor from a loan she once covered when he totaled his first car. Everyone picked up. Everyone helped. There was something about the way she spoke, calm, measured, deadly, that made people want to be on her side. Rick didn't suspect a thing. If anything, he seemed more relaxed. She caught him humming in the shower, smiling at his phone more than usual, even whistling while putting on cologne he hadn't worn in months. Emily almost admired how deep his delusion ran. Men like Rick believed they were untouchable right up until the moment the floor fell out. That night, while he slept, she scrolled through Jenny's stories again. One showed the edge of Rick's leather jacket, the one Emily bought him for Christmas 2 years ago. Another clip featured Jenny's reflection in a mirror at some trendy wine bar, captioned "Date Night Vibes." Then, at 2 a.m, her phone buzzed. At first, she thought it was a spam message, one of those click here to claim your prize scams. But the name stopped her cold. Jenny Reynolds. The message read, "He said he's finally telling her this week." There was no greeting, no context, no emoji hearts or bubbly sign-offs. Just that. Emily stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the reply button, not moving. She didn't answer. Didn't need to, because she knew something Jenny didn't. Rick wasn't the one telling her anything. She was the one letting him think he had time. And time was running out. Rick had started walking around like a man who held some invisible trophy in his pocket, as if he'd already won something no one else even knew was up for grabs. He carried himself differently now, shoulders loose with that particular arrogance only men have when they think they've pulled off a secret so well, it's practically a work of art. He stayed out later, sent fewer texts, took longer showers in the morning, and somehow managed to wear cologne on days when he claimed he'd just be working in the dealership back office. Emily noticed everything. Every unnecessary pause, every glance at his phone when he thought she wasn't looking, every smug little smile he wore when she asked him simple questions like, "Will you be home for dinner?" And he answered like he was doing her a favor by being honest. It was a performance, one he believed he'd perfected. He thought she was blind. That was his first mistake. His second mistake was thinking she would stay blind. Emily never let on that she knew. She still played the role, sweet wife, soft voice, the one who gave second chances and quiet grace, the one who loved him enough to let him grow out of whatever the hell this phase was supposed to be. She cooked his favorite meals, made the bed each morning, folded his laundry with care, even packed him lunches some days with little notes that said, "Thinking of you." But those weren't love notes. They were timestamps. Little reminders that she'd been there, that she'd done the work, that when the floor finally dropped out from under him, there'd be a paper trail as long as the years she'd wasted. That's when she came up with the idea, the weekend trip. She pitched it over dinner on a Tuesday, her tone casual, as if she were suggesting they go pick out new curtains or finally clean out the garage. She told him she thought it might be good for them to get away for a bit, to breathe, to reconnect. Rick blinked once, surprised, maybe even suspicious, but quickly smoothed his expression into something warm and falsely sincere. "Yeah, babe, that sounds nice," he said, and leaned across the table to kiss her hand. His lips were soft, practiced, meaningless. He said yes because he thought she was desperate. He said yes because he thought he'd broken her just enough. He thought she was clinging, grasping, begging for crumbs of attention, and he was more than willing to give her just enough to keep her from catching on. That was mistake number 3. They went to a cozy lodge just over 2 hours out of town, nestled in the woods, quiet and expensive. She booked the suite. She let him think she was spoiling him. He walked into the room like a king surveying his throne, pulled her close, told her how proud he was that she'd made something of herself, said it like a compliment, but it wasn't. It was a dig. It always was. He thought he was still holding the knife. He didn't see her hands gripping the handle too. That evening, while they sipped wine by the fireplace, Emily turned to him and asked the question like it was just a passing thought. "Do you ever wonder," she said softly, "what your life would look like if I stopped paying for it?" She looked right at him, unblinking, a smile playing at the corner of her lips. He laughed. That smug chuckle again, like she'd made a joke he didn't quite understand. He said, "Come on, Em, what's that supposed to mean?" And she shrugged. "Just a thought," she said. "Just curious." The thing about men like Rick is that they never see it coming. They think women break in obvious ways, shouting, crying, throwing things, and when that doesn't happen, they assume you're still in love. What they don't understand is that silence is where revenge grows its roots. When they got back, she called Steve, her accountant friend from college, and they met in a little cafe downtown where no one would think to look. She brought the receipts, every single one, and he brought his laptop, calculator, and his signature smirk that always appeared when he smelled bullshit. "You sure you want to go all the way with this?" he asked, halfway between impressed and slightly worried. Emily didn't even blink. "Yes," she said. "Every dollar. Plus interest." They worked for 3 hours. Rent, groceries, utilities, pet expenses, medical bills, his car insurance, his car payments, the gym he swore he needed to stay sharp, the vet bills for the dog he barely walked, the birthday gifts for his mother, the furniture she bought while he recovered, the vacations she funded, the steak dinners he put on their joint card while telling her he was with a client. All of it, down to the last cent. The final total, $83,256.70. She stared at the number, let it settle into her bones, then exhaled slowly. Steve looked up from his screen and asked, "How do you want to present this?" "Bound," she said. "Professionally. No handwritten notes. I want him to feel it in his hands like a weight." So they printed it. Color-coded sections. Date-stamped entries. Breakdown by category. A cover sheet that simply read, "Statement of support provided by Emily Harper, 2019 to 2024. She bought a red envelope for it. Not a manila folder, not a plain white business sleeve. Red. The color of warning. The color of consequence. On the front, she wrote in neat, bold script, "You're welcome." She tucked the packet inside, sealed the flap with a precise crease, and placed it in her desk drawer next to the divorce papers and signed but waiting. Timing, she told herself. Timing is everything. Let him think he's still in charge. Let him think she still believes in the lie. She closed the drawer, leaned back in her chair, and whispered to no one in particular, "Happy belated birthday, Rick." Because she had given him exactly what he asked for. She just wasn't finished wrapping it yet. 2 weeks after the birthday dinner she'd never forget, and he'd barely remembered, Emily decided it was time to deliver his real gift, the one he had sarcastically wished for between forkfuls of roast beef and entitlement. She didn't feel triumphant as she got ready that morning, didn't dress in anything particularly vengeful or cinematic. No red lipstick, no stilettos, no slinky black dress. She wore jeans and a plain white shirt, hair tied back, no makeup, just a woman on a mission, just a woman who had stopped pretending. Rick was at the kitchen table when she came downstairs, flipping through the morning mail like he actually paid a single bill in the stack. He looked up, saw her holding the red envelope in both hands, and raised one eyebrow like a man who still thought this was all a game he had already won. That smug expression was starting to look like a worn-out mask, cracked at the edges, slipping more with every passing day. She wondered if he had any idea how visible he'd become. She walked over slowly, slid the envelope across the table toward him like it was nothing more than a grocery list, and said, "Here. Happy Divorce Day." His smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but he caught himself, picked it up, ripped it open with a little too much force, and started reading the first page with the casualness of a man unbothered. Until he flipped to the itemized invoice. Until he saw the breakdown. Every line, every charge, every petty detail, except none of it was actually petty. That was the irony, the delicious, brutal truth. Rent. Groceries, car insurance, internet, gas, vet bills, birthday dinners, truck repairs. The therapy he said he didn't need but still used her insurance to cover. The steakhouse date nights, the ones he shared with Jenny instead of her. It was all there. And the number at the bottom of the page hit like a punch, $83,256.70. "What the actual hell is this?" he asked, voice rising like steam from a kettle. He didn't even make it to the divorce papers before the first explosion. "Are you kidding me? This is insane. This is fucking insane, Emily." She stood across from him, arms crossed, calm as ever. "That's a running tab of everything I paid for since 2019. Figured if you wanted a clean break, you should know what that costs." Rick pushed the papers back like they were poisonous. "This is petty as hell. Cruel. What kind of person calculates shit like this? Who does this?" She tilted her head slightly, not smiling, not gloating, just observing. Petty would have been selling your truck and mailing Jenny the keys with a bow. This is documentation. He stood up so fast his chair squealed across the tile. I'm not signing this. You've lost your mind. We're not doing this. She shrugged, already turning away. Cool. Court date's already set. I'll see you there. And just like that, she walked out of the kitchen, out of the house, and down the steps like she was shedding years with every stride. She didn't look back. Didn't need to. The sound of his footsteps chasing after her never came. The following weeks were quieter than expected. He didn't blow up her phone with threats. He didn't beg. Not right away. Instead, Rick tried something worse. He tried to play nice. Left notes on the counter. Made dinner once or twice. Asked if she wanted to talk things through. She knew it wasn't love, wasn't regret. It was fear. Fear that she had changed the rules. That she was the one walking away now. That he was no longer the driver, he was cargo, being left at the last stop. Jenny, as it turned out, disappeared like steam. No more Instagram posts. No tagged photos. Emily checked once, just out of curiosity, and saw that Rick was back to posting memes about real women and loyalty like he hadn't been caught playing house with someone who dotted her eyes with hearts. Pathetic didn't even begin to cover it. Emily didn't respond to his messages. She didn't engage. She blocked his number, blocked his email, blocked every path back to her except the one that ended at a courtroom door. The lawyer told her Rick had tried to contest the financial request, said it was vindictive and not reflective of real marriage dynamics. But Emily's documentation was airtight. Steve had made sure of that. A month later, she sat across from Steve in a downtown coffee shop, the kind of place where everyone pretends to be writing a novel or reading Kierkegaard, but mostly just people watch and nurse overpriced lattes. He slid a new account statement across the table like he was passing her a winning lottery ticket. She picked it up without fanfare, scanned the balance, and raised an eyebrow. You've got options now, he said, taking a sip from his chipped mug. And a little over 80 grand to start fresh. She nodded, folded the paper, and tucked it into her purse without a word. The sky outside was that late afternoon blue, bright but not blinding, cool but not cold. She looked at it through the window like it meant something more than weather. Funny thing is, I never lit those candles for him. I lit them for me. I just didn't know it yet. I thought I was marking his birthday, some ridiculous gesture of goodwill, but really, I was marking the end of my silence. I was setting fire to the old version of me, the one that apologized too much and waited too long and gave until there was nothing left but receipts and empty thank yous. And maybe the real gift wasn't the divorce. Maybe it was finally sending the bill.